On the question of size and scale of political organization, there are two dominant ideas. The one idea is found in Thomas Hobbes in his work Leviathan, written in 1651, in which he advocated for a large centralized government. The other is found in those who advocated for small and limited government, such as Aristotle in his work Politics, Johannes Althusius in his work Politica, written in 1643, and David Hume. We see these contrasting theories of government throughout history, such as between the Greek city-states and Persia, the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire, limited and absolute monarchies, and between states in the modern era, such as Switzerland and the USSR. These two different conceptions of political organization stem from two different understandings of the relationship between order and nature. Hobbes thought political organization and order was created by man in order for individuals to escape anarchy in a state of nature, and thus the more political order, the less anarchy. Aristotle, on the other hand, understood that as individuals don't exist on their own, but only exist as a part of a family, therefore order naturally predates anarchy, and thus the more created political order that moves away from that natural order of the family, the more anarchy. Hobbes would say that power reduces anarchy and absolute power eliminates it, whereas Aristotle would say that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. A Hobbesian political order is a large organization that is built for strangers and even enemies to live under the same civil order. An Aristotelian political order is small and is built around a common culture through a local community. Though with smaller political organizations, there has been historically more wars. These wars have been rather limited in nature. In the Leviathan state, there are less public wars, but these wars are total and destructive, such as we saw in World War I and World War II. Moreover, because it is composed of a society of strangers and even enemies, rather than families and friends, there is more individual violence, which the government seeks to curtail by taking away individual liberties, such as the natural right to bear arms, which then increases its centralized power even more. One problem is that the modern centralized state destroys subcultures. As an example of this, a lot of people don't know Germany was not founded as a nation until 1871, and even then it was a federation of states. My German ancestors were in particular Hessian, Rhinish, and Swabian, and many of the Germans I've talked to today don't even know what their ancestors were. That's because before Hitler, various states existed, such as Hesse and Bavaria, which formed the German nation. And after Hitler, Hesse and Bavaria were mere German administrative provinces, which is still the state of Germany today. The same is true in Great Britain. The more centralized the British government becomes, the less independence is granted to its subcultures. To make matters worse, there is no theoretical limit to how big the Leviathan state can go, which is why in the 20th century we saw the creation of the European Union. The only way to limit the Leviathan state when it usurps its designated powers and takes on responsibilities of families, communities, states, or even nations is, as David Livingstone explained, is through secession, which is what we saw recently in Brexit. There are also secessionist thought in places like Scotland and Bavaria. Another problem is that in a large centralized state, the quality of representation is poor. The bigger the democracy, the less democratic it actually is, because if government is centralized and the federal government holds the most power, one's vote logically matters less because there's more people voting. Whereas if government is decentralized and local government holds the most power, your vote matters more because there is a smaller ratio of representation. James Madison, for instance, thought that there should be one representative for every 30,000 people, whereas today in the United States, there is one representative in the federal government for every 750,000 people. This would not be a problem if the federal government focused on its own responsibilities, but it is a problem because as an overly centralized state today, it holds the most power. With the popularity of socialism today, which is a centralized Hobbesian Leviathan state, there are two moral considerations. One, that the end does not justify the means. The end of helping the poor does not justify stealing from the rich through a powerful centralized authority in order to do so, which actually preempts someone's choice to be charitable. And the second is that the means do not justify the ends. That is, though democratic socialism differs from authoritarian socialism in the means, because one can vote, it does not differ in the ends, as both seek centralized power for the end to justify the means. Rather, society should strive toward an alignment of both good means and ends. Another problem is that the Leviathan state destroys traditional intermediaries such as the family, aristocracy, and the church. The centralized state focuses upon the individual and the state, whereas a decentralized society focuses upon not only the individuals and the state, but also families, local heritages, private associations, and God. For limited government, higher political organization only exists for the benefit of the family, whereas in the Leviathan state, the family only exists as a way to raise individuals for the state, which is itself composed of individuals. We see examples of this today in which the state mandates public school rather than giving the option of homeschooling. Also, the nobility and the aristocracy has all been but replaced by individuals, namely celebrities. And for the Leviathan state, all laws are civil, created by man, whereas for the limited conception of political organization, all laws stem from an understanding of natural law and God, the creator of nature. These traditional intermediaries between the individual and the larger political organization provide a counterbalance to absolute tyranny. As Livingston described it, if Stalin and Hitler had been absolute monarchs in the 18th century, they could not have done what they did because they would not have the authority to do so. They could have raised neither the troops nor the revenue. Their power would have been hedged in by powerful independent social authorities. It is possible to have a larger political organization in a federation of smaller republics, but the various levels of individuals, family, community, state, and nation have to have their own distinct responsibilities, with an emphasis on a bottom-up decentralization rather than a top-down centralization.